Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Salas, and on behalf of the American Marketing Association, I'd like to welcome you to our webcast today, sponsored by FunnelWise, and titled Marketing Metrics Matter, Practical Advice for Driving Revenue Accountability from Marketing Through Sales. As part of our continuing efforts to be the most relevant force and voice shaping marketing around the world, the AMA offers a variety of resources, training, and tools to enhance lifelong learning and provide you with valuable information and connections. So we do invite you to visit ama.org, where you can click through the links to all of the resources that are available. You can also see a full listing of our upcoming events that are taking place both in person and online. So once again, please visit ama.org. Before we start today's presentation, I would like to just go over a few housekeeping items. The full presentation is being recorded, and it is going to be made available to you very soon after, so look for that coming your way. If you can join us today on Twitter, we would appreciate your engagement at #MarketingMetrics. So send out some tweets, that hashtag. Also, if you would reference Handful Oracle Marketing Cloud. Feel free to do that at any point during the presentation. And if you have questions, please use the chat feature that you see there to the left of your screen. Any technical questions you might have, you can enter in that area, and we'll get to those as quickly as possible. Content-related questions, we do encourage you to enter those as the presentation progresses. We're going to address the questions at the end of the formal presentation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers joining us today. We're being joined by Matt Ostanek, who is the Chief Executive Officer with FunnelWise, Jeff Summers, who is the Chief Executive Officer with Socratic Strategies, Robin Caputo, who is the Chief Marketing Officer with DataVale, and Megan Isherwood, who is the Marketing Operations Manager, also with DataVale. And our panel of speakers have a lot of great insights and knowledge that they are going to be sharing with you over the next hour. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to start today's presentation.
Terrific. Thank you, Anthony, for the introduction and for getting us kicked off there. Again, my name is Matt Ostanek, and I am the CEO and founder of FunnelWise. Really excited to be here with everybody today and looking forward to some great information in our discussion. I'm also really excited about the panel of speakers that we have on the session today. Both Jeff and Robin have some fantastic insights to share with you as well. So as we've talked about, the focus of our webinar today is on marketing metrics that matter and providing practical advice for you for driving that revenue accountability from marketing through sales. We have some specific things that we will be talking about and looking at, really helping you understand which metrics to track and how to use them to recognize some of the key patterns and trends in your marketing and sales funnels, and also talking about how to have conversations about them and gain insight from managing those performance sessions that marketing leaders can do with your sales leadership and sales organizations as well. And then Robin's going to share some terrific examples of how her company is driving revenue accountability from marketing through sales, how exactly they're going about it. All of our attendees today will also receive the Revenue Performance Toolkit to help support those conversations and to give you more insights and information to help with those next steps in your own organizations as well. Now there's a quote that I want to share here that is from Robin. And again, I'm very excited for everybody to hear from Robin later on in our session today. But she really summed it up with this particular statement here in one of our recent conversations about how marketing has a number on its back. We are responsible for delivering leads that represent 60 to 75% of the closed business in our company. If you have a number on your back, you need to know not only what to track, but also how to monitor performance through the funnel to close deals. And that really highlights the incredible importance of understanding the marketing metrics and connecting them through all the way through your funnel. I could not have said it better than that. As a very brief additional couple words of introduction, the reason that FunnelWise exists today, the reason that I started our company, is because I previously served as the founder and CEO of another software company, a business called Submittal Exchange. And I had a good-sized marketing and sales organization that reported to me. We used a variety of sophisticated tools, including Salesforce as our CRM, to try and manage what was happening in our marketing and sales processes. And it always felt like there was a giant jumble of information, many different data points that we could be looking at. And this illustration here on the screen is a great example of the messy cloud of data that I think many organizations live with. And it brings to mind for me the connect the dots analogy, where there's a giant cloud of information, many different things you could be looking at. The challenge that I personally struggled with in my previous business was pulling out each of these individual data points and understanding how to connect them together into the bigger picture about where we were headed. And the way we would answer that in my previous business was using complicated Excel spreadsheets. We would download data from Salesforce and from our marketing automation tools and try to piece that together into Excel to understand the bigger picture, to try and put together an image of what was happening with our funnel, to connect the dots from marketing through sales to determine where we were headed and where we could make improvements and if we were on the right track or not. It was always very frustrating to me because frankly the pictures that we would come up with using our manual Excel analysis were never as clear as this image here on my screen today. And by the time we would get them pulled together, it always felt like they were out of date by the time we did the analysis to pull them together after a month or a quarter ended as well. And that is what really started me down the journey of creating what FunnelWise offers today. FunnelWise is a business that provides three key things for you, including an initial assessment of where you're at with your marketing and sales funnel analytics today, providing you with software then that builds on that to help provide the real-time insights into your funnel, and then also topping that off with executive funnel reviews that really help you to connect the dots and understand what to do with the information. Over the course of building FunnelWise as a business during the past couple years, it's been a real pleasure to connect with many smart, talented marketing and sales leaders across the country and to partner with them to help understand what they're doing today and how they can improve their businesses. And two of the people that I've really enjoyed getting to know more are the speakers for the rest of our webinar today, Jeff and Robin. So with that said, I'm really pleased to introduce you to Jeff Summers. And Jeff, I will let you take it from here. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate that. And listen, on behalf of the entire team here, I'd like to really thank everybody for spending their lunch hour with us. You know, if you think about it, we're in the last month of a calendar quarter, which tends to be an incredibly busy time for really anybody who is revenue producing in any form in all of our companies. So really appreciate folks taking the time. I thought I would kind of kick this off by talking about a concept that at least evolved for me literally over my 30-year career. I've spent the better part of those 30 years running both sales and marketing organizations as well as product management teams across a number of different companies. And it's this concept of the revenue leadership team. But before I do that, if you think about it, as marketers, at the end of the day, we're trying to generate demand that's has a lot of momentum and a lot of velocity. But another key piece of that, in order to do that, is we really have to understand that sales conversation. And at Socratic Strategies, that's really where we focus a lot of our time, but we don't do that simply from a sales perspective. We also do that from a marketing perspective, from a product perspective, as well as a customer success perspective as well. And we fundamentally believe that conversation really consists of four basic components. So the first one being this concept of being able to provide real insights to that buyer. So for those of you who may be familiar with the Corporate Executive Board's books on the Challenger Sale and the Challenger Customer, this is the concept of how to create commercial insights that really differentiates your message as well as your salespeople from the rest of the competition. The second key piece of this is how do you actually build urgency into the sales process and into the messages that you're delivering. So this is the question of why should the customer buy now? And then ultimately, why should they buy from you? Or from a differentiation standpoint, how do we really set ourselves apart from the competition in ways that actually matter to that particular buyer? And then what really drives all of this, and this gives you a little insight into why we call the company Socratic Strategies, is this concept of discovery. Are we asking the right questions that not only allow us to get a lot of background from that customer in terms of the problem that they're trying to solve, but are we asking questions that fundamentally change the way the customer views that problem in the first place? Okay? Now, with that as a backdrop, then there's really kind of three things that fall out of this. There's the messaging that drives that sales engine. There's the process that we use to drive the buyer through the buying process. And then ultimately, how we lead and enable that. And for the purposes of today, what I really wanted to do was focus in on this leadership piece. And this is where this concept of the revenue leadership team really comes into play. And I think most of us would probably admit that this whole concept of sales and marketing alignment has been around for a really long time. I could argue that we've been talking about sales and marketing alignment for probably the last 15 years. And the other assessment that I would probably make at this point is that I think most companies still today continue to struggle mightily with actually getting all of these players to play well in the sandbox, if you will. But if you think about it, there are really kind of four key organizations that come into play here. There's the marketing organization clearly and the sales organization, but also the product group as well as customer success. And I think we would all probably admit that at various times there is this sea of passive aggression that tends to exist between these different groups. And despite all of the work that we've done in terms of trying to align objectives and goals and that type of thing, the reality is it hasn't had a significant effect in terms of truly aligning these folks. And so, at the end of the day, what I think I've learned over the 30-year period, and a lot of the companies that I've worked with over that time frame have learned, is that you have to get all of these groups focused on a very singular and common question. And that's really, on a day-to-day basis, based on what we are learning in the market, what should we all be doing differently? So not just what should marketing be doing differently, but what should sales be doing differently, what should we be doing differently from a product standpoint, and what should we be doing differently from a customer success standpoint. And the only way we can figure out what those things are that we need to be doing differently and actually implement actions that measurably move the needle on this stuff is to get everyone focused around that singular question and focused on the solutions that are actually going to drive it. My experience has been then over that 30-year period is that what we really had to do is we had to break down the concept that all of these were different groups. And the idea was to create a singular team that we called the revenue leadership team that again consisted of the head of marketing, the head of sales, the head of product, and the head of customer success. That team was then focused on fundamentally these four core objectives, if you will. So first and foremost, what we need to do as a team is we need to hold each other accountable to each other in terms of attaining our revenue and growth goals. But then in addition to that, what we really need to be focused on is, in the center there, the concept of velocity and momentum. So are we actually converting an opportunity as fast as we possibly can? And from a momentum standpoint, are we getting better every single day, every single month, every single quarter, not just from a sales standpoint, but from a marketing, product, and customer success standpoint as well? And then ultimately, what are we doing as a cross-functional team to really enable the field to be much more effective in front of the customer? And so these became kind of the four pillars, if you will, that the revenue leadership team really revolved around. Now, as you start to go down this path, what we always work with clients to do is, start small, start simple, and then grow from there. And so essentially what this team kind of focuses on initially are three kind of fundamental questions. So number one, are we generating enough opportunity to make plan? Second, how efficiently are we actually converting that opportunity? And then finally, what are the things that we need to do specifically to enable that sales team to be much more compelling in front of the customer? But again, as we go through that, what is it that we need to be doing differently as we get smarter each month about what's happening from a competitive standpoint, what's happening with our customers, and what's happening with the market at large. Now, if we kind of take a look at each one of those questions individually, if we start with this concept of are we generating enough opportunity to make plan, clearly we want to look at things like lead volume. But more importantly, for this to be a meaningful conversation, I think you've got to have a clear understanding of what marketing's contribution needs to be to that demand generation, but just as importantly, what sales' contribution needs to be. So as an example, let's say going into a quarter, plan for that quarter is $1 million in closed revenue. And what we know based on our historical conversion rates is that we need to have 5x coverage going into that particular quarter in order to have a shot at making plan. And let's further assume that we've made an agreement between sales and marketing that sales will generate about 40% of that new opportunity, and marketing will be responsible for roughly 60% of that. What that says is marketing needs to generate about $3 million, sales needs to generate about $2 million. Again, this is a new opportunity, new pipeline opportunity. Right? The key then is, as part of this conversation, then is saying, okay, based on that, where are we to date, and what are the gaps for each one of the teams? So it's simply not a matter anymore of sales just saying, hey, we're not getting 5x coverage and continuing to press marketing to add more and more leads to the top of the funnel. Sales has got to have very clear objectives from a demand generation standpoint, and you need to be looking at that on a very regular basis. Here in a second, we'll talk about how you actually operationalize around this. So that's the concept of are we generating enough opportunity to make plan. Then the next piece of this is how efficiently are we actually converting that. And clearly we want to look at our conversion rates by each stage. We also want to look at how long each deal or opportunity spends within each one of the stages of our sales process. But one of the most important metrics in this particular area is forecast accuracy. So one of the things here is that we see oftentimes is you'll have a forecast that gets generated at the beginning of a month or at the beginning of a quarter. We'll get down to the end of the quarter, and all of a sudden we'll have a significant miss on that forecast because deals slid into the next quarter. And oftentimes the story back from sales is, hey, we didn't lose any of those deals; they just slid forward. Well, that lack of forecast accuracy is one of the best indicators that you've actually got friction within your sales process. And so then the question becomes, from not just a sales standpoint, but marketing, sales, product, and customer success, what are some things that we can change within that sales process to eliminate that friction? And then the last piece of this is how can we better enable the sales team? And enablement can take on a lot of different forms. Similar to the whole we've failed to a certain extent with sales and marketing alignment, I think when a lot of people think about how to enable the sales team, the first thing they think about is training. And there are literally dozens of studies that get published every year that will tell you that more product training does not necessarily have a great impact on sales performance. If you're really going to focus on skills, it needs to be on those areas of objection handling, how to position against particular competitors, how to ask the right kinds of questions in each one of the critical interactions of the sales process, and then how can we do a better job of negotiating. Right? Then beyond that, really from a sales process standpoint, understanding what are those critical conversations, what are some things that we need to do to make those more effective, are there ways that we can help segment opportunities for our sales team and give them better messaging and better content within each one of those segments, and then also from an audience standpoint as well. So those are just kind of three very simple examples of kind of top-level questions that this revenue leadership team needs to be looking at on a fairly regular basis. Now that's great conceptually, but then the question becomes, how do you actually operationalize this? And so over the years, what we've done is we've established really a regular cadence of 3 different types of meetings, and I'm just going to give you examples of these. Incidentally, the participants in these meetings and the content of these meetings may change based on your business and your company. But generally speaking, this has been a formula that has worked pretty well for us over the years. So let's talk about from a weekly standpoint. We have the concept of a weekly KPI and forecast review. And in this particular meeting, this is really your head of marketing and your head of sales. Incidentally, as part of this, for this to work, these individuals really can't delegate this discussion to other folks in their organization. You really have to have the person that is ultimately responsible for marketing and the person that's ultimately responsible for sales actually in this meeting having this conversation live. But from an agenda standpoint, obviously we're going to look at all of our demand gen metrics, but we're also going to look at the forecast. And that's not necessarily just the sales forecast. It's also the marketing forecast that says, hey, based on the campaigns that we have coming up, this is the relative number of marketing qualified leads and the number of sales qualified leads that we believe will come out of that as well. But both sides are providing a forecast. They're identifying whatever gaps they may have in that forecast, and they're providing a clear action plan for what they're going to do to try to close those particular gaps. And so one of the other things that's really critical here is you've got to have a view for what has changed week to week. One of the challenges with Salesforce.com in particular, and really with any of the CRM platforms, is that all they really provide is a point-in-time view of where you may be month to date, quarter to date, or year to date. And really what you need to understand is what has changed since the last time that we looked at these numbers. And Robin's going to give you a good view of how they're actually doing that with FunnelWise today. But understanding those deltas week to week or month to month are critically important. In addition to those weekly KPI and forecast reviews, then what we're going to do is a monthly execution review. And this is a broader team, broader group of folks. It's the head of sales, head of marketing. It's also your head of product and your head of customer success. You may also want to include your regional sales VPs. And clearly we're going to look at the metrics, the forecast, what's changed month to month. But the primary topics for this meeting are, number one, what are we learning based on what's happening in the field? Then how can we really improve the velocity of these deals that are moving through the pipeline? And then also internally, how can we eliminate those barriers or that friction that naturally exists between these different organizations that make it difficult for our sales team to get deals done? But again, without that real-time view of what's actually happening in the field, it's very difficult to have these conversations. But again, the biggest thing that comes out of this is what should we be doing differently. Then on a quarterly basis, what we want to do, and this is probably the broadest group of folks that participate in this, if you are a larger company, clearly this is your entire sales management team, it's your entire marketing management team, it's the folks that manage the customer success team, and anyone that's in a management role from a product standpoint as well. But within this, essentially most folks have a quarterly sales meeting, but it's typically facilitated and driven by the head of sales. For this to work, really what you want is for each one of those key executives to have an equal role, have equal visibility, and have equal participation in that quarterly meeting. And literally across each one of those 4 functions, we're going to stand up and we're going to talk about, hey, here were the big wins over the last quarter, but just as importantly, here are some of the critical gaps that we've got in each one of these areas. Just as importantly, we're going to talk about what we've learned. So here are the epiphanies to date. Here are the major ahas that we've had in the field, and essentially what we plan to do as a leadership team to address those in terms of specific actions. And then literally group by group, we're going to talk about the focus that we need to have over the next 90 days. We need to talk about where the urgency needs to be in each one of those areas, and we're going to talk about what the overall mindset needs to be. But again, what this allows you to do is not only get everybody very clearly focused on what your strategy and what your goals are, but it also allows you to create a lot of momentum, to really kind of carry that all the way through. So that's a really kind of quick walk through a format that typically takes a lot of time to actually implement. There's no question there's a lot of kind of political nuance from one organization to the next in terms of the best way to do that. But what I would offer up there is, if you'd like to have a quick conversation over the phone to talk about how you might try to implement that within your organization, I'd be more than happy to do that. Here's my contact information. Again, I'm Jeff Summers. That's my email address there at SocraticStrategies.com. You can also take a look at our website as well. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin Caputo, and Robin's going to talk about very specifically how they drive these kinds of conversations at DataVail.
Great, thanks very much, Jeff. I appreciate it. And a lot of what you, Anthony, and Matt said certainly resonates with some of the challenges and successes that we've experienced at DataVail. So first, let me tell you a little bit about DataVail. We are a B2B company focused on IT services. We build, manage, and support databases and enterprise software. And what that means then is pretty much any company or organization that has a database of any size could use our services. And what we like to say is you may not need us now, but you may need us at some point, especially as data and big data come into play and all the different platforms that are out there. Database administration is a very hard to find skill, and that supply is dwindling, and that's where we come into play to help with whether you have Oracle, Microsoft SQL, IBM, MySQL, SharePoint, even though that's not technically a database. We found that our clients who have Microsoft SQL Server also want us to be able to provide support for SharePoint. We've also gone into the NoSQL area in big data with Mongo and some other platforms. We have 300 customers that stay with us an average life of 7 years. We serve from the Fortune 100 to mid-market to startups who have significant needs for data. We have more than 500 DBAs around the world, and we have a 24/7 model because data never sleeps. Your websites never sleep. People interact with your websites all the time, so your databases have to be performing 24/7. We deliver our services in both project staffing and a managed services environment and have been doing it for about 10 years. Our target market, again, is anywhere between 50 million and in the billions of dollars. We're able to provide as much as half a DBA with all the expertise that comes with it to a full team as well. So our evolution at DataVail, I joined DataVail in 2013, and it had already grown substantially. Now over the last 4 years, we've quadrupled in size and been named to the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies. Now we've got a very small, but I like to say mighty marketing team. We've got 4 marketing professionals. One of those, Megan Ishwood, is joining me today. We've got someone in charge of content and Marcom, Megan, who's in charge of operations and various and sundry other things as well, someone who's concentrated on social, and then a web creative person. The other thing we have moved the 3 inside sales team members from sales to marketing, and they are joined at the hip with us. They qualify the warm leads and set up the appointments with our prospects for outside sales. So over the last 2.5 years, we've really become true growth hackers and have really relied on our analysis of the data to help us decide what we need to do differently. And what that means is we've been able to account for generally between 60 to 75% of the closed deals. Now that's not influence. It means that the deal that closed, the lead had to originate as a first in from marketing. And if it doesn't count, it doesn't, if it doesn't close, it doesn't count. So that's the primary metric that we look at. We look at it both as a percentage and an actual dollar figure. So as we'll talk about, of course we look at other metrics, but this is the metric that aligns sales and marketing together, because I can't achieve my goals if sales doesn't achieve their goals, and sales doesn't achieve their goals if marketing doesn't achieve. And what's the ultimate measure of quality? It's whether a lead closes or not. So how do we do it? First and foremost, we have a CEO who believes in the power of marketing, and he demonstrates that belief both in investment as well as some very bold and obvious support cross-functionally as well as with our board. We implemented a very strong marketing infrastructure that's centered around our web presence. We have a huge emphasis on search, both paid and organic, and we're there when our prospects are searching for us. About 40% of our leads are inbound. People who have a challenge have searched, either found us through paid search or organic, or some of the different publishing sites that we're on, and reach out to us on chat, phone, or email to say they have a problem that they need help solving. We also have one agency that works with us, and it's a true partner. That search agency is Big Footprint, and they really feel accountable to the same metrics that we do. Sometimes you'll find a search agency that's only interested in the cost per click. Well, I am willing to pay for a higher cost per click if the lead closes, right? So they are accountable all the way through the funnel along with us. We also did a tremendous amount of testing and failed fast, and then reallocated those resources to the best performing programs. We have a very strong value prop and then supportive content that is aligned around personas and a buyer's journey. The other thing I need to mention is the sales team accountability and alignment. It's amazing when marketing is willing to put a quota on its back, how that changes your relationship with sales. It gives you the right to stick your nose under their tent, to say, how can I help you close more deals as they go through the funnel? And then they're also much more willing to provide you very, very useful information about what kinds of leads they're looking for. Finally, this hyper-focus on metrics. Truly, this data will set you free. I think sometimes marketing folks get very enamored in the latest, coolest infographic or video. But you know what? If it's not creating leads that convert, it's not only a waste of time and money, but you should be spending that time and money elsewhere. So we really used that analysis to make the decisions, and then used it so that the number that we are all after is the same number. So we have looked at quite a few metrics, and of course we track all of them, but we focus on a few, right? So of course you have to look at traffic and engagement to your website. We look at marketing qualified leads, and we know what number we have to meet in order to hit plan. Sales accepted lead, and then sales qualified lead. So sales qualified lead is a primary metric because that's the handoff point between marketing, inside sales, and sales. Obviously, we also look at opportunities, and in fact, sales has phases within the opportunities. We look at pipeline. Another primary metric, of course, is the closed deals. We also look at customer acquisition cost and the payback period using a pretty sophisticated CAC methodology. And we use that to tell us whether we should be investing more or less in marketing and sales. The other thing we look at is return on marketing investment. That's a primary metric by source, by campaign, by channel. And then, of course, we look at conversion rates across numerous criteria, by service, by rep, by inside rep, campaign, source, channel, and then we look at the velocity. That's something over the last 6 months, we've looked at much more closely so that we can, as Jeff was saying, pull those deals into the quarter that they're supposed to be in. So we had several marketing automation tools in place. but we did not have a way to visualize, track, analyze, and report on top to bottom of the funnel, except for a massive spreadsheet, as Jeff, or I think Matt mentioned that he used to use. And Megan is the queen of Excel and had this amazing super doc that she would keep track of everything. And we would look at conversion rates, and it just was a crazy, crazy document to keep track of. But that's how we did it. We have Pardot, Salesforce, we have Compose, TechValidate, other tools. But at that point, we did not have a way to look all the way through the funnel at the different criteria that we needed. So when we saw FunnelWise, it was a very quick sell. We looked at a couple of different options. FunnelWise was the one that we really wanted for a couple of reasons. It was very, very easy to customize to fit our CRM definitions and instance. I don't think I've worked at a company yet that's followed the standard practice of implementing CRM, and Dataveil is no exception to that. So we were able to customize FunnelWise to meet our needs. The reporting in real time or selecting time bound is critical because you can't do that in Salesforce. And then being able to filter and track by multiple criteria. And Megan's going to walk you through some of the different screenshots that we use. The other thing is it's not just a rear view mirror look. It gives us that dashboard and actually the windshield to look at forecasts. So we were able to improve over the course of about 18 months, going from about 20% of closed deals coming from marketing leads to we hit a high of 82%. And that only took about 18 months to do. Now, no good deed goes unpunished, so guess what? Those numbers, those quotas have gone up. So now, as the quota has gone up by about 20%, we now know all the way through the funnel how many MQLs, SALs, SQLs we need to achieve. And we even track that almost to a daily basis where Megan lets the teams know we're are off pace and we have to make up over the next week or 2 weeks before the end of the month to be able to meet the plan that we have laid out. So again, the key to success for me personally and for our team in terms of implementing FunnelWise and choosing it was the inclusion of your marketing operations team. They have to be in the boat, have to lead the implementation, and Megan has just done an amazing job. For those of you who have operations folks, you know they're worth their weight in gold. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Megan and have her walk through some of our screenshots of our FunnelWise instance. Megan?
Yep. Thank you, Robin. So I'll give you a glimpse into what this implementation looks like from an operations standpoint, a more in-the-trenches view. So here is what a few stages of Dataveil's blueprint in FunnelWise. You can see that we were able to define what we wanted our stages to be, what those mean to us, and map those to our Salesforce fields. We use contact activities and opportunities here, but you can use really any Salesforce or CRM field. It's very intuitive. This is what we use to measure ROI. So this is a view of our Q3 from last year based on the blueprint I just showed you. You can see the blue and green is our marketing generated versus our sales generated. Everything is defined on every stage. I know how many records I have. I know the average sale price, and I know the total revenue for that quarter. So given all of that, you can see this field at the top, the total expense field. Bring a little pointer here. This field here is totally customizable, so I can enter the amount that we spent in this quarter, and then I'll get a cost per record over here on the right side, making ROI really easy to determine. I can also measure different leads, campaigns, or sources side by side. In the tool, these actually do appear side by side, but I didn't have the ability to screenshot all of those at once. So I can lay 4 campaigns side by side, enter each one of their total expenses for the quarter that I'm looking at, and be able to see really easily which one had the highest cost per record at all the various stages and which one was the best performing versus the least performing, and help Robin really make those decisions going forward for planning and if we need to reallocate resources to the better performing campaigns. And looking forward, so that was our looking back and measuring what has happened. We can also use this looking forward for goal setting. So if I want to increase my revenue 10%, I'm going to use FunnelWise to look from the bottom up through my future funnels. So I want to increase to $270,000 revenue, which would have been an increase of 10% from my example funnel. I know all the conversion rates because my last funnel told me what they were. I know my average deal size because the last funnel told me what it is. And so I can enter all of that information, and FunnelWise will tell me what I need to achieve in this upcoming quarter at each stage to achieve my revenue goals. And here's a look at how we use that real time. So here's our current quarter based on the goals we just defined. FunnelWise tells me which sales cycles or sales stages I'm on point for, which ones I'm on pace to meet my goals, and where we may be lagging behind. So this is probably the tool that I use the most as far as monitoring our progress through the funnel, monitoring our success for the month or the quarter, whatever I'm interested in measuring at the time, and communicating our pace to the rest of the team so that we can make adjustments before it's too late. If I wait until the end of the quarter to take a look at this, at that point I have what I have. But if I take a look at it, bi-weekly, weekly, and really monitor our progress, I can touch base with the sales team and try to enable them with maybe a piece of content that they're lacking that they would really find helpful for their sales process, or maybe slide a future campaign back a little bit to help us get some more leads in the funnel and reach our goals, those sort of things. This real-time goal measuring really enables the whole team, both sales and marketing. So with that, I'll pass it back to Robin.
Great. Thanks, Megan. As Jeff mentioned, consistent communication and reporting is really important. And we have quite a few meetings, but they're very efficient, and they run a standard process and agenda. So the first thing, though, is to make sure you have consistent terminology and definitions, especially on those handoff stages. So what is an MQL versus an SAL versus an SQL? And we've actually modified that over time. We have to be very clear about which elements of BANT, qualification, budget authority, need timeline, are included at which stage. It's kind of a funny story. When I first joined, the head of sales said, just set up any meeting. We'll close them. I said, you sure you want to do that? Sure. No BANT qualification. No. And sure enough, as we upped the quantity, guess what changed? Oh, we'll need to put in a little bit more BANT qualification. So now we do have authority and need included farther up in the funnel. And so they're handling as an SAL a much more qualified leads as all of the quantities and quality has gone up. So in terms of meetings that we have, the marketing team meets on a weekly basis, and we're very focused on campaign and program planning. We do talk about numbers in that, but for the most part, we're looking forward on what campaigns we'll be working on and what we anticipate each of those campaigns or programs to be able to deliver in terms of marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. Then we have a weekly meeting with the inside sales team, Megan and I, where again we do campaign program planning, look at what lead sources they're going to be getting over the next 2 to 3 months so they can prepare for that, give them any help with scripts, give them the content that they might need to be able to share, talk about any issues that we have. But those 2 meetings are really more focused on content than they are actual numbers. We do have a sales meeting every Monday morning that's led by sales, but marketing and inside sales is on that meeting. It's very focused on current opportunities, where we go through the month and the quarter forecast, opportunity by opportunity, sales rep by sales rep, so that we know what's close to close. I'm sure most companies have this kind of meeting, but it's very targeted, and each sales rep comes forward with where they're at. And it's on Monday mornings at 8:30 every Monday morning. And then on Friday afternoons, there's nothing like starting the day with your sales team and marketing team, and then, or starting the week and then you end the week. On every Friday afternoon, marketing leads a meeting with sales and inside sales as well, where we look at top of the funnel metrics for the week, where we go through all of the top of the funnel metrics by rep, by inside rep, by category. We then look at the status of the sales accepted leads and go through every single lead, SAO that came through, and provide a number, 1 to 10, on the likelihood of close and how positive the salesperson feels about that particular lead. We have a weekly meeting with our marketing agency where we go through very specifically the paid and organic search results, as well as the conversions and the closed leads, so that we can make adjustments, especially as Google continues to make changes in their algorithms. We keep a really, really close eye on that. We have a monthly meeting with our executive team where we look at monthly results as well as plans going forward. And I liked where Jeff, I think you said epiphanies, where we share that with the executive team. And then with our board, which is very supportive of marketing, we meet with them twice quarterly, where we focus on bookings, marketing return on investment, sales accepted leads, our CAC, customer acquisition cost, and conversion rates, as well as, of course, the financial metrics like EBITDA, gross margin, revenue, et cetera. So in terms of our key learnings on implementing FunnelWise, I think there is sometimes a reluctance to implement a tool like this until your data is perfect. Let me tell you, your data will never be perfect. It will never be perfect. And it really doesn't matter, because you'll get value in doing this immediately. We actually implemented pretty quickly. We had been cleaning up our prospect database, continue to clean it up. But again, I don't think your data will ever be perfect, and don't let that stop you. Take an agile approach to the implementation. We didn't try to implement everything all at once. We gained value iteratively. We kept the beta version access to people like Megan, whose manual process and reports are being automated, because they're the ones who have to really feel like the automated version is as good as the manual version they've been doing for years. And then both Megan and I use it, as well as other marketing team members, when we need to make decisions. We've now expanded it to the rest of the executive team as well. The other thing that's been important for us is utilizing the FunnelWise customer success team. I've been fabulous about helping us with customizing, and as we make changes to our definitions or want to add different ways of looking at the funnel, they've been able to help us customize to fit the needs. So I guess the thing I'd love to leave you with is that if you want to become a real revenue marketer and a growth hacker, you need to have real-time automated analysis now. The spreadsheets are just not good enough anymore. And if you don't adopt a sense of urgency to implement it now, someone's going to do it for you. Because, it used to be, what's the old adage, I know 50% of my advertising is working, but I don't know which 50%. Guess what? We now know which percent is working, and so does everyone else. So the most important part is that you take control of your destiny and figure out how you can make sure that you're tracking to the right metrics and performing and providing return on the investment. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Anthony for any Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin. And thanks to everyone. There was a lot of great information being shared, so we truly do appreciate it. Just a reminder to everyone in the audience, though, that if you do still have a question, enter it into that chat box. And looks like we've got about 8 minutes left here, so a good amount of time to get to some questions, but definitely keep your questions coming in there. One thing that I do want to address as we move into Q&A, a number of you have been asking about the recording and the slides. We will definitely be sharing both of those with you post-event. So you're going to get a link to the recording so you can go back and revisit all this information. You'll also receive a PDF version of the slides that were presented today. So definitely look for that coming your way. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move into the questions now. And because we've got multiple presenters, I'm going to kind of just throw out the general question here, and everyone can kind of feel free to chime in as they'd like to. But our first question coming in from Angelo, who wants to know if you can talk a little bit about how the SWOT analysis can be connected to the revenue leadership team.
Sure. This is Jeff. I can take a shot at that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's if you are doing that in a very kind of regular and systematic way, that is a great thing to be putting in front of the revenue leadership team. Oftentimes, if you've got a formal product management function, a lot of times that chief product officer can kind of take the lead on that. But no, I think that is a great way of actually doing that. And one of the ways that I've done that in the past is to actually have each of the 4 groups create their own. And then we come together in an offsite and we actually present to each other. And you can have some amazing aha moments when that actually happens. So, but anyway, I think that's a fantastic way. If you're doing that internally, I think that's a great thing for the revenue leadership team to focus on.
All right. Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate that. Next question here from Liz, and Matt, I think this was one that she had asked when you were kind of kicking off the presentation earlier. And she said you had mentioned demand generation metrics. So her question is, can you share some examples of what exactly those would be or what they would look like?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. And there's a number of different ways to answer that question, Anthony and Liz. And actually, I think the timing of that question, I know she had asked it a bit earlier in the presentation. I thought the slides that Robin had where she specifically was showing some of the metrics that they were looking at DataVeil and the primary and secondary one. Those aren't the only metrics that you can look at when it comes to demand gen, but those were actually some really good examples. Robin, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but I thought that slide did a great job of highlighting some of the specific demand gen metrics that we see most commonly used in this space.
All right. Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate that. Robin, we had a question come in for you specifically here, also from Liz. And the question is, she just wants to know if you could go into more detail about what makes a marketing qualified lead different from an SAL, SQL, and opportunity. Wondering what just specifically the definition of each are for your organization.
Sure. From a marketing qualified lead standpoint, that's where we have had engagement with the prospect and they have raised their hand in some way and provided us their contact information. So it might be downloading a white paper, attending a webinar, visiting us, and talking with us at length at an event. And that's a marketing qualified lead for us. It becomes a sales accepted lead when that prospect has raised their hand to the point that says they want to meet with us. So we have discovery meetings that we set up for all of our salespeople. And then a sales qualified lead is when next steps are identified by the salesperson, that the meeting actually happened and there's next steps included. And then it becomes an opportunity when there is a next step in terms of another meeting or and revenue or bookings are assigned to that, and it goes into the pipeline. And Megan, I'm going to ask if you want to add anything to those definitions.
No, I think you nailed it.
All right. Thank you both so much for that. I think we've got time for a couple of more questions here. So question here from Annette. And she wants to know how any of you are tracking and or labeling a lead from web to an in-person closing. So an example she gives here is research that's done on a website or through another communication effort. How do you tie that to the person that's closing the sale, say 6 months down the road?
I'm going to let Megan answer that one. I know we track every touch point. The most important is first in for us, but we do have, we look at fractional attribution in terms of knowing the different touch points, because we'd like to get to some predictive modeling that will know how many times we need and in what way we need to touch a prospect. But Megan, do you want to talk through how you track that through all the way through?
Yeah, sure. I utilize Pardot quite a bit, and then some custom Salesforce fields that I can map those interactions and keep track of them in our Salesforce instance so that I can use them in reporting. So yeah, on the account basis, we keep track of the first in for lead tracking, and then on a contact by contact basis, we keep more in-depth details, the first in, the last in, and then we have a running record through our Pardot integration of all their interactions between. If we are going to have some sort of in-person interaction that isn't tracked through Pardot, we have some part-time people that can help us enter notes into Salesforce so that we have a record of that interaction. Does that answer
Our
the question?
Yes, our salespeople, partly because Megan is just fabulous at training them and making sure they're adhering to standards, but they're very, very good at including all of their activity and tracking it within Salesforce. And we report on not only the marketing activity and inside sales activity, but salesperson's activity on that weekly Friday call. So their name is up there that says Peter has had 100 phone calls as an outside salesperson or sent out 100 emails, whereas Ed might have only sent out 2. And that drives the interesting behavior, right? So that they know they're being looked at all the way through the funnel as well.
Very good. Well, Matt, Jeff, Robin, and Megan, we are going to have to wrap up at this point, but I'm seeing a lot of great comments coming in from the audience, a lot of appreciation for everything that you shared. So definitely on behalf of everyone in the audience, I do want to thank all of you so much for your time and attention, not only in putting all this together, but for being with us today. So thank you all so much. And just a couple of quick reminders to everyone. I do want to state again that this is going to be shared with you, the recording of the presentation as well as a PDF version of the slides. So definitely all of that will be made available to you soon after the end of our presentation here today. So look for that coming your way again. And in just a moment, we're going to redirect you all to a quick survey page. And if you would, take just a couple of minutes and give us a feedback on not only today's presentation, but also let us know what topics you want to see us bring to you on future AMA webcasts. So we do appreciate your help with that in advance. In closing, I want to extend a big thank you to FunnelWise for sponsoring our webcast today, as well as to ReadyTalk for providing the platform that we use. If you'd like to learn more about ReadyTalk and their services, you can go to readytalk.com/AMA. And last, of course, I want to thank all of you in our audience for sharing an hour from your busy day with us. We realize that you've got a lot going on, and we do truly value the time that you spend with us on our webcast. We also look forward to seeing you again on future AMA webcasts, thought leader webcasts that we share almost on a daily basis here at the AMA. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.